Hello, Laurel, and welcome to another TOG chat. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, but I'm excited to be back here with you chatting again, as always.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was looking back and I think it has been a little while since we've done a chat. And so yeah, I'm also excited
Yeah.
to be here with you.
And I think we promised the last chat that we would be better about doing chats. So a little late, better late than never. So you and I were talking a little bit before we started this chat, and trying to decide on a topic to talk about, and we came up with like five or six different topics. So we just figured we were just gonna talk about what was on our mind today, and not necessarily have any one particular topic, but maybe just ask each other some questions and see what's on our minds, and just kind of geek out on fundraising because I think that's kind of what you and I do anyway. So we'll just we'll just record it and see how it goes. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay. So for me, I mean, I'm curious about how you're thinking about, like, obviously there's a lot of uncertainty right now. There's a lot going on. And I'm just curious about how you're thinking about the current, fundraising climate, and what advice you're giving to your clients, and just, what's on your mind just in terms of what's really become kind of an uncertain fundraising environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything that's going on right now, first and foremost, I'm going to acknowledge that I don't know anything. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have any magical powers of prediction that anybody else, more so than anyone else. And so I feel just as uncertain as everyone else does about any number of things that are impacting our world today. But all of this is making me think back to a few different things. I look back at other times of real uncertainty in our world, and particularly times that align with some of the types of uncertainty that exist right now. And I'm hearkened back to the 0708 recession. I'm hearkened back to the 2016 election and the 2020 election, which also was like COVID, right? So like these times of real uncertainty about what these changes in our world were going to do. And one of the conversations I've been having with clients a lot is, like reflect back to those times and the impact that those bigger world issues were having on your organization, and what would you have done differently either in the lead up to that or in the follow up to that. And I'll give two examples. So I think in the 0708 recession, I think there's clearly things we would have done differently had we known, and clearly things that people would have done differently during the recession if they'd known what the impact of those things would have been after. I think all of the research from the 0708 recession point to the fact that organizations that continued to prioritize philanthropy and organizations that continued to do the same amount of engagement and stewardship of their donors, whether those folks were giving at the same levels or giving at all during the recession, came out of the recession more quickly and more strongly than those who just kind of like stopped their fundraising efforts, stopped stewarding people because they were no longer making gifts, stop, right? Like all the things. So I think, lesson learned, like ahead of a potential recession, I think about what your strategy is going to be to continue to engage and steward those folks, right? So I don't know if that rings true for you as well.
No, totally. I mean, I think what's noteworthy that happened in 2007, 2008, 2009 was that people kind of shut down, or a lot of organizations shut down. They laid people off. They just kind of, they didn't really lean into the crisis in the way that I think they did with later disruptions. And I think you're right that didn't work for most of those organizations. I mean, at the end of the day, what I've been telling my clients is that there's still an enormous amount of money that's going to be given away, even in times of economic hardship, which we don't know what's, if that's going to be the case, but whatever the situation is, you're still performing in a marketplace, and you still have an opportunity to thrive in that market. It just means that you have to be a little better than you might ordinarily be. You're not going to get away with the same things. You have to be better about stewardship. You have to maintain your relationships, because what could happen, I think does happen, is, let's say a person gives $10 away. Let's keep the math simple. $10 away to five different organizations, they may end up giving away still $8, but to two organizations. But to those two organizations, instead of getting $2, they got $4. And so, and I think that is what we saw in the recession for a lot of, the 2008 recession for a lot of organizations. And so you still control your own personal economy. And that's really, in my mind, what you need to be focusing on, and not be aware of macro trends and be aware, but this is probably, one of another cyclical things that happen in terms of in terms of our economy and the like. And so we have to at least go in with that working assumption, and just try to perform better, which, I think for you and I means stewardship and really keeping the relationships that we have. People are going to want to be generous right now, but they're going to be maybe a little circumspect about who they're generous with.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the other reflection that I've been having a lot is for organizations that, after the 2016 election and in 2020, and I think in response to both COVID and the murder of George Floyd, I think there was huge upticks in giving, and we'll call it rage giving, and or whatever you want to call it. But we saw a lot of organizations that really had these massive upticks of folks, and then a year or two after those upticks are kind of like, oh yeah, we have a big donor base because we had a lot of people give during this particular time, but we haven't really retained them, and we haven't really kept in touch with them. And I think sometimes when folks give in response to a particular situation, I don't know, like maybe organizations feel like, oh, well, they wouldn't want to give to us again. Like that was just in response to this particular situation. But I think, gosh, what a missed opportunity, right? And this is something you and I talked to a lot of our clients about, that, they've all these names of folks who gave 4 years ago and who have never given again. And I think let's get ahead of that now. Like, if you do have people who are giving to you in response to particular things that are happening in the world, assume that those people really care about your work, and not just because of, not just in response to things that are happening, but in general care about you, and what are you going to do to retain those. I just did a session the other day. I'm doing a major gift accelerator for an organization here in Oregon, and we were talking about stewardship, and I was talking about the fact that first year retention continues to slide, and it's now down to about 13%. So it means that for every person who gives you a first time gift, on average only 13% of those are giving again. And I think let's not resign ourselves to just accepting that as a fact. Let's try really, really hard to figure out how we do something about that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think one of our clients coined this phrase, or maybe he heard it from somewhere else, but the idea of money catching. And I think a lot of organizations were in money catching mode because of the times and sort of who they were as an organization. And now is the time we have to get back to the fundamentals. The money catching it doesn't seem like it's going to be happening this time, where money just comes in because right, people are unhappy with the political climate. I think we're going to have to earn our money this time around, and go back to the fundamentals. But to your point, I think if we do that, I don't think those people went away in terms of caring about the things that they cared about. So I agree with you 100%. It's, to me, when things are tough, that you go back to the fundamentals. Doing things the right way starts to matter more and more. And that's why it's good, even when times are good, to still do things the right way, because times are not always going to be good. You can always count on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess my question to you, I'd love to ask you a board question, because not only do I think you know a lot about boards in general, but you're also on quite a few boards as a board member. And, so I guess maybe given all the things, right? Given everything that's going on, it seems like all board roles are even more important than ever, right? Like, with everything going on, the board's role in governance seems more important than ever. The board's role in CEO oversight seems more important than ever. And then particularly the board's role is kind of ambassadors and engagers of the community is more important than ever. So I'm curious, as a board member and just as somebody who knows a lot about boards, like how do you help wrangle board members to be able to feel like they're contributing in meaningful ways that are actually meaningful, that aren't overwhelming for them. And this is a really big question, but it's something I'm grappling with some clients right now, like in ways that focus them on the things that are most important. Um, in just like really specific ways. And I'll just share with you, I was having a conversation with a client the other day, who's struggling with some board things, and mostly it was like board members coming up with things that were not particularly helpful. And I said, well, what are you sharing with board members that they can do? And she was like, well, you mean come to meetings and review the financial statements? And I was like, look, people come to boards, people join boards to be productive and helpful. And if they don't feel like they're being productive and helpful, they'll fill the vacuum, right? And sometimes the way they fill that vacuum is not always in the most helpful ways, but their intent is good, right? So how do I guess like how do you channel the good intent into things that are actually meaningful and helpful?
Yeah, well, I think those are great points and observations. I mean, I think you have to be clear about what why are we doing the things that we're doing? Why are you asking me to do this? So when I join a board, and I'm on 3 different boards right now, and I'm overcommitted to be perfectly honest, and I do it. I'm also on like 3 advisory boards. I do it because I care about the organizations and I care about what it is that they're trying to do. But that said, they're really competing with all the other things that are going on in my life. They're competing with running the Osborne group. They're competing with the times I spent with clients. They're competing with my family. They're competing with my hobbies. They're competing with just, sleep. So, you know, when I'm happy to do work for a board, but I have to understand why I'm doing it. And if I don't understand why I'm doing it, right, then I'm probably not going to do it. Or I might fill in the blanks with something that I'm hoping will be helpful, but maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not. Although I personally try not to do that. For me, the more likely scenario is lack of doing anything because I'd rather do nothing than be a problem. And so I don't want to insert myself unless I feel like I need to insert myself in some way, but that's not a good use of my time. So, you and I talk about, if anyone's had any conversation with us, they've talked about vision, but it becomes really, really important. It's one of those things that's not abstract. Like it really is your North Star. And like, here's what we're working on as a board. And it frees me up to one, have agency because I know we're working towards this larger goal and I understand the board's role in achieving that. And I don't need to check in with staff all the time because we're on the same page. And whatever my role is as a committee chair or as a rank and file board member, I know why I'm doing the work. I know why I'm picking up the phone or inviting the friend or soliciting the friend or reading the thing or whatever it is that I'm doing, and 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 I'm willing to do it because it's important and I have clear guidance and I know that it's not a problem because I've been told that this is what we're working towards. Whereas in the absence of that, again, some people are going to fill that in with their own opinions, and other people like myself are just going to be like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, so I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to make things harder for staff by asserting myself unless I really feel like they're just not doing, like the executive director isn't doing what they're supposed to do. That's not something that I've encountered so far, but it's something that as a board member I'd be prepared to do. But again, it just makes me a less of an effective board member. So as a board member, like for me, the bottom line is like, I'm busy. I have other things I could be doing. I want to help. So be really clear with me about how I can be helpful and why what I'm doing is helpful, not just because I'm a board member. I understand what that means. I understand what my obligations are. You and I understand that as well as anybody, right? Just in teaching this or whatever. And it doesn't get me motivated. Knowing that I'm technically supposed to do A, B, and C isn't a reason for me to do A, B, and C when I compare it against all my other priorities. A reason to do it is because it's going to make a difference in some way. And if that's not clear to me and why it's important, then even with the best of intentions, I'm probably not going to do it. There's always going to be something that it's always going to kind of sit at number 4 on the priority list and never get to 3, 2, or 1, the things that actually happen on any given day. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Mhm.
But it's hard volunteer management as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just simple things like I just finished working on a development plan with a client, and one of the very next steps for her is, to share the plan with the board and just be like, here's our plan for the year. And then I recommended that she just do like a one pager that was like, and here are the 5 things that you can do to support this plan. And I think it gets to your point both about, because we talk about vision and the plan, right? So both talks about getting to the vision, but then also like integration of the board's work with everything else that's going on. And I think it makes the board work more meaningful and feel like it's real work when it's part of the plan and not this kind of like side other stuff that we're coming up with for the board to do, but they can really see themselves in the plan and how they're helping move that forward. So, and again, it doesn't have to be big high level things, but like, can you make 5 stewardship calls a month, or can come to the next 2 events and help us network? And it's like very, very specific things.
Specificity, I think any given board member or volunteer should probably have 3 things that they're doing at any given time. And once they do one, give them something else. And that because it's manageable, it feels doable, it doesn't feel overwhelming, and it's probably going to be helpful. Like I want to be helpful as a board member. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on the board. So I'm happy to do things. I just need to know what those things are and feel equipped to do them. So I welcome direction when it comes to board service, and I think most board members do as well. I think they want to know, like, what can I do to be helpful, because I could be doing something else. And I'm here. So it's March. We're kind of coming out of the winter after all, the giving season that ends, at the end of the year. We're kind of back in that time when donors are starting to think about giving again. We can sort of actively think about soliciting again. But the summer is also not that far away, where again you can do fundraising during the summer, but it's not as all experienced fundraisers know. It's harder. It's harder to track people down. It's harder to get things done. It's a little slower. So when you think about like this, what is the end of many organizations' fiscal year, but even if it's not the end of your fiscal year, it really is like a 3 or 4 month window that you have to really get some things done in terms of like money in the door. How do you think about this run from around March 15th to around June 30th?
Yeah, it's a crucial time, and unfortunately, I think for a lot of organizations, it's a time when they're caught up in events. And
Hmm.
that's not Laurel saying events are unfortunate. That is Laurel saying that events are time consuming and they are capacity consuming and they are like emotionally consuming for a lot of organizations. And so this is event season for a lot of organizations, and it feels like I just got to be heads down and get through this event. And so I think the biggest thing for me is event season is a time to, yes, put your head down and get through the event, but also really pick your head up and look around at these events and figure out, are we getting everything out of them that we could be getting out of them? Are they actually having the ROI that they are intended to have? And let's not have bottom line fundraising be the only outcome that we're hoping to get out of these events, and we're being really intentional about the outcomes we're going to have. And what's you always talk about opportunity cost, and being in the thick of event season is a really great time to be thinking about opportunity costs, to be thinking about what is the time and the energy that we're putting into these activities that is keeping us from doing other things, and what are we losing because of that. And again, this isn't Laurel saying stop doing your events, but it's Laurel saying use this time to be just a lot more cognizant of the impact your events are having on your fundraising, your annual cycle, the opportunity cost, and are you getting return on those? And then once you're through with the event, do a really, really good debrief on that and make changes if you need to. And for those folks who aren't doing events, who aren't heavily bogged down in events right now, this is a great time to be getting out and talking to your donors before summer, because we all know it's so hard to get in front of donors during the summer. If people are on vacations, your staff are on vacations, this is a really great time to be getting out and either doing some earlier solicitations. I think we leave way too much solicitation to the end of the year. Are there folks that you can get ahead of or ask for another, kind of a mid-annual gift right now? Or is this just a great time to get in front of folks and ask them about what we were talking about earlier, like how are you feeling about the world, and how, how is this uncertainty impacting your philanthropy? And so, whether it's through and at your events when you're in front of donors, being really intentional about asking them some of these questions at those events. Like, what are the strategic questions I'm coming prepared to these events to ask my donors, so that this isn't just, yay, we're having a fun party, but we're being productive too and moving relationships along. So I guess in general, between now and June 30th, like, really focus in on your donors. Like, what are they thinking? How are they feeling? What are their questions about the world? And really figuring out, like, am I in their top 3 philanthropic priorities? I don't know. Like, let's figure out how we get there. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you went to events. I don't want to put words in your mouth because you're being nice about events, but I'm going to be less nice and say, if the only reason you're doing your event is for money, then you probably shouldn't do your event, and really should take a close look at that. There are some exceptions to this. And we can all name a few organizations that where it makes sense. I live in New York City. There are certainly organizations in New York City, because of the vast amounts of corporate money that are here, that are very geared towards just buying a $10,000 table because they understand it. They can send their young associates to get some free drinks. So by all means, if that's your situation, do it. But otherwise, you should take a real close look and, like, is this really worth it? What is the opportunity cost? Because you're probably better off just asking those people for money, whoever's coming to your event, and also doing something less labor intensive. But I will, again, just like yourself, I'm not condemning all events. What I'm saying, take a close look. And for 90% of you, maybe 95%, it's not going to make a ton of sense. But okay. But what else do I look at? I look at, for me, September 15th is, from a fundraising standpoint, not so far away, where you have like a 3-month run up, like 3 months really, to get money in the door. So you have these 3 months to kind of make headway on whatever your metrics are, whatever those KPIs are. And now's not a bad time to kind of be thinking from a numbers perspective, and not just money, but, in terms of your prospecting, your visits, your right. I like how your engagement activities, and like what you expected outcomes you would expect from them. Like, to really take a look at that and, like, where do I need to be by June 30th to feel good about the only 3 months I have left, in the fall, which I can raise a lot of money in those months, but, maybe 50% of maybe even 50, 60, 70% of your money might come in. But where am I right now? And where do I need to be to feel good about it? Because to your earlier point, people tend to wait to the fall, and it's too late in the fall if you're wrong. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to kind of hope for the best. So I'm a big believer, while you have some time, one, hopefully you have a plan and have some metrics. But if you don't, this is a fantastic time to revisit that, take a look. Am I where I want to be? Am I where I hope to be? And if not, I do have time right now over these next few months to really think about making a dent in those numbers, and then use the summer to do further planning and figure out how am I going to close, between September 15th and roughly December 15th. So to me, this is like that time when, there's time for course correction, but you're only going to know about course correction if you're doing the work now and kind of taking a look at those. taking a look at those metrics. So for me, that's that time. This is the time for that.
Such a good point. I was talking the other day about readiness scores, right? We talk about, when you're getting ready to work with to do strategy development for a major gift prospect, and we put a readiness score on them. And that might be 6 months, they might be ready in 9 months, 12 months, whatever that is. But it's not like once we put a score on them, some magic happens that then if we don't do anything between now and that date, then they're just going to be ready. It's not like we're not like putting a roast into the oven, right? And being
Let it
like,
cook.
okay, just have to wait 9 months and then they'll be ready, right? The point of the readiness score is that we know that that's how long it's going to take us to implement all of the different strategies that are going to get them in a place where they're ready to say yes. And the readiness score is like, how much do we need to do and how long is it going to take us to do that, right? So I do think there is this like, well, we set a solicitation date, right? And so we're just gonna wait till that solicitation date. But no, you have to like do things to get them ready to say yes. So I think you're right. It's like checking in on your strategies, checking in on where you are and what you're working toward with different donors, and then making sure that those things are timelined out, being followed up on, they're actually happening, right? And then course correcting when they're not.
I love that, the pot roast theory of fundraising. No,
Oh,
because I think you're
major
100% right that
gifts.
people, that's exactly what happens. Like this is when the solicitation is going to happen, and we don't necessarily think about like, well, what are all the things that need to happen between now and the time, right? It's just stick the pot roast in the oven, and it'll be ready, which of course is not the case. Certainly not in our oven that we have here, which we discovered yesterday. So I love that, and I think that's 100% true. We got to do the work, and now's the time. You still have lots of time to do the work. So, well, I think we'll leave it there, Laurel. There's obviously a million other things that we could talk about, and we will cover as many of those million things as we can in future TOG chats. But for now, it's as always fun geeking out with you. And to those who are still listening to this video, we will be in at AFP Icon, which we're excited about in April in Seattle. So hope to see many of you there. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, there'll be much more information about what we'll be teaching and the happy hour that we're going to have. Laurel and I are going to have happy hour, regardless. Hopefully, some of you will join us. So until then, until the next TOG chat, this is Bob from Laurel and Bob, and we will talk to you the next time.